Start recording. Okay, so you can... All right. So, how do I want to start this? I think I should start with the fact that I was watching a. This is how all my fucking essay videos gonna start, huh? I was watching a video, or I came across a video, and it led me down a short, very short rabbit hole. And it reminded me of um the whole argument about whether uh AI art is or generative AI is stealing art. And of course, as a person on the internet, I have an opinion. So I want to start. Let's see. So the question is generative AI stealing art? And I want to break this down logically, deliver all the facts. So one of the biggest things is that people have some misunderstandings about how AI works. And I think it really boils down to how they imagine it happening. Because when somebody says when somebody's trying to explain it in the most simplest way, and they say, "Oh, generative AI takes pieces of art off the internet and uses them to create other images," it puts an image in your head, right? You think, "Oh, they must be they must be stealing the art. They're taking it." That's not how it works. Because what they actually do is they scan the internet. This is how ChatGPT works too. They don't just take Shakespeare and push it into just steal a Shakespeare work like Romeo and Juliet and shove it in ChatGPT's face. No, ChatGPT reads Shakespeare. It understands Shakespeare. And that's sort of what it does with AI. The generative AI that does art art generative AI art. It scans the internet, images, pictures, and it um recognizes patterns, shapes, colors. Um it doesn't store any of this. You can't store that many images without spending like millions of dollars on it. And it's just, why do that when you can just scan the internet? That's what they do. They analyze millions of images and break them down into mathematical relationships. Learn how these things work, how the shapes, colors, and textures fit together. The when they see hands a lot, they recognize how hands look, and they learn how hands look. So when you're going on to one of those AI uh, prompt sites, for generative AI images, when you type the prompt, the AI doesn't go into a database and copy an image. It takes the information it learned from scanning other people's images, and it generates something new from scratch, based on what it learned through the training, which the training is when it scans these images. So it's not taking the images off the internet. So why do people say it's stealing? Well, there are a couple reasons why people might misconstrue. Wait, hold on. Yeah, I used the right word. There's a couple reasons why people might misconstrue what AI art does. It's probably because of how the generative AI um you scans art off the internet without consent. So when an artist puts something when an artist like on DeviantArt or something, they put their, furry artwork on there. And they're not asking for the AI to scan it. They're not saying they don't give consent for it to be scanned by the AI, but this AI scans it anyways and uses it to learn how to create the furry art that was put there. So people say it's stealing the images, but the images aren't being deleted from the internet. You're not It's not being stolen from you, and the generative AI isn't claiming ownership of the images it scans. And another reason is the mimicry of AI, because the AI uses the AI uses fucking images, other images. It can start mimicking styles, art styles, and it can reproduce a style very closely, which feels threatening to artists, but it isn't unique. Like how AI scans art on the internet, people scan art on the internet. They take other people's images and use them as references. They study and copy styles too. And it's also how art education has worked for centuries. I mean, think about like Van Gogh or, Picasso. I don't know many artists, but uh so theft means you take something away from someone and they no longer have it. But that's not what's happening. An artist does not lose their furry art when AI scans it for training. Now, there is an ethical discussion, about consent, credit, compensation, blah, blah, blah. AI training may feel exploitative. Did I say that right? Exploitative? Exploitative. Yeah. But it's not the same thing as theft. You could, what I'm saying is, you could argue that generative AI is bad, but it's not stealing. And this might be like, some people might say, oh, you're splitting hairs, or, but it's a very important distinction to make, because it's not, they're not committing a crime. It's all about ethics. It's all about ethics with AI art. It's about opinion. Like like you can think some people think that generative AI is exploiting um people think that generative AI is exploiting artists by scanning their art and then not giving credit that they were scanned, or and when AI produces an image, it takes away potential customers from whatever. But it's not stealing. It's not stealing, and it's you could always have a counter argument. You can always say, you know, it's just how the AI learns. It's how everyone learns. Everyone learns from watching someone else. Or, well, not everybody, but artists 99% of the time, I'm going to say that. Most, very close to 99%, learn from watching someone else. When you go to art school, you're learning from um, the teacher. The teacher is teaching you their skills of art so that you learn how to do that. When you're if you're like learning by yourself, like practicing by yourself, you're usually learning by looking at something else. Like if you look through Pinterest, you know, and see all this art, you might see certain um, ways of doing things, and you might absorb that information. So there is a disconnect where artists don't realize that they're kind of hypocrites. At least to me, they sound like hypocrites when they say AR is stealing. Is not stealing, and you pretty much do the same thing that AI art does. Yeah, and so back to the human comparison thing. You know, um, when when a man, when a woman, when somebody, you know, when they borrow styles, or they're influenced by styles, um or they use techniques and similar ways of doing things, I guess there are multiple ways to say it. They People call it influence, homage, or inspiration. But when AI does it, it's stealing. AI does the same thing that humans do, but at a much larger scale and much faster. And it may raise questions about fairness, but it doesn't magically change influence into theft. Just because a clanker does it means it's wrong. It's, you know. So, really, all I'm saying is generative AI is not stealing, it's not theft. It doesn't take what you made. Um, it doesn't take what you made, sell it, delete it, or whatsoever, or anything like that. The real debate is not whether AI it's about ethics. Should artists have more say in how their work is used when training for training, and should companies like OpenAI compensate them? And that's a conversation worth having, but calling it theft oversimplifies the issue and creates a lot of confusion, especially among artists. So, you know, that's my opinion. I don't think AI art is stealing. And anybody who calls it stealing is misinformed, or, you know, um moving the goalpost, you know, calling it something it's not. To some people do it to get a reaction, get people on their side. And there's plenty of reasons for that. There's plenty of reasons for people to do that. uh you know I think that some people are just jealous that they are losing part of the industry or sharing a part of the art industry with AI, something that has so much more power than them. It can just um it can just create a new image out of nowhere just based on what somebody says. The descriptions, the details that you give, it can just create something cool and interesting. Well, they have to toil away, you know. But really, AI is a tool. And some people exploit it, yes, true. But just because it is exploited doesn't make it a valuable, also doesn't make it a value, does not make it in, does not devalue it. Just because somebody exploits it does not devalue it. That's what I was trying to say. You know, like having a tool that can help you scan your paragraphs and give you pointers when you don't have your own proofreader, that's useful. But some people exploit it to create stories instantly and then say, oh, I wrote this all by myself, I had no help, this is all me. you know or I heard this one story about a guy who entered an art competition. Yeah, he entered an art competition, and he he used AI to instantly create this beautiful image. And the competition was, and this is secondhand information, so take it with a grain of salt, but apparently he used AI art in an art competition that was for actual money. So yeah, people exploit it, but we should be regulating the exploitation, not just being like, oh, we should remove this entirely, we should get rid of it, no AI at all whatsoever. That's it's simple-minded thinking, closed-minded thinking. Just because it's AI, just because it's a clanker, doesn't mean it can't help us out. It's the future. Get with the time. Get with the times, Grandpa. All right, I'm done ranting.